I stood in the lobby of First Federal Bank, my heartbeat drowning out the ambient chatter of the Friday afternoon rush. The marble floor gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights that threw every imperfection into sharp relief. Much like the situation I now found myself in, ugly, exposed, and impossible to ignore. The branch manager, Mrs. Bellamy, adjusted her tortoiseshell glasses as she scrutinized the documents laid out before us. Her crimson nails tapped methodically against the mahogany desk, each click another second ticking away in the countdown to the confrontation I'd been rehearsing for weeks. "Ms. Harlow, everything seems to be in order with your identification," she said, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who'd witnessed too many uncomfortable financial situations. "Now, about this loan inquiry." I nodded, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "Yes, I'd like a comprehensive statement of all loans currently issued under my name and social security number. My name is Vivian Harlow, and until 3 weeks ago, I had believed my credit score was impeccable, my financial house in perfect order." Then came the letter, a seemingly innocuous envelope from a credit monitoring service I didn't remember signing up for, warning of a significant new debt attached to my name. At first, I thought it was a mistake or, worse, identity theft. The truth, as it turned out, was far more personal. "Ms. Harlow?" Mrs. Bellamy's voice cut through my thoughts. "Your brother has arrived." I turned to see Liam sauntering through the revolving door, his signature cocky grin plastered across his face. My older brother by 3 years, with our father's charm and our mother's ability to talk his way out of anything. The golden child. The one who could do no wrong. Until now. "Viv," he called out, crossing the lobby with the confidence of someone who believed himself untouchable. "Got your message. What's the emergency?" I studied him, the expensive leather jacket that still had the tags tucked inside the collar. I'd spotted them when he hugged me last Sunday, the designer watch he'd been flashing at family dinner, the new haircut that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. All purchased with money he didn't have. With my money. "Why don't we sit down?" I suggested, gesturing to the chairs by Mrs. Bellamy's desk. "There's something we need to discuss." Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by that easy smile that had gotten him out of trouble our entire lives. "Sure, sis. What's up?" "Mr. Harlow," Mrs. Bellamy began, her professional demeanor never wavering. "Your sister has requested information about a loan taken out in her name approximately 2 months ago. For $35,000. And there it was, the momentary freeze in his expression, the slight widening of his eyes before he recovered. I'd been waiting for this exact moment, had pictured it during sleepless nights as I'd paced my apartment, torn between rage and disbelief. "There must be some mistake," he laughed, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Viv doesn't have any loans. She's the responsible one, right, sis?" I didn't smile back. "That's right, Liam. I am responsible." Which is why I was surprised when I received this. I pulled out the credit alert letter and slid it across the desk. Someone took out a loan in my name. $35,000. And the strangest thing? The contact phone number listed isn't mine. It's yours. The color drained from his face, leaving behind a sickly pallor that made his artificially whitened teeth seem to glow by contrast. "Ms. Harlow has submitted a request to review the loan application," Mrs. Bellamy continued, her voice betraying no emotion even as she delivered the blow that would shatter the fragile foundation of our relationship. "Including the original signatures." Liam's gaze darted between us, calculating his escape routes with the desperation of a cornered animal. "Viv, come on. Let's talk about this outside, just the two of us." No, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady considering the hurricane of emotions raging inside me. We're going to talk about it right here. You're going to explain to me why you stole my identity, forged my signature, and took out a loan without my knowledge or consent. His charming facade crumbled entirely, replaced by the sullen defensiveness I recognized from our childhood, whenever he'd been caught in a lie. It wasn't like that, he insisted, lowering his voice and leaning forward. I was going to pay it back before you ever found out. It was just a temporary thing. Temporary, I repeated. Like the car you borrowed from Dad and totaled? Or the $500 you borrowed from Mom's purse for a sure-thing investment? Mrs. Bellamy cleared her throat discreetly. I should inform you both that identity theft and loan fraud are serious offenses. The bank has protocols for these situations that involve notifying the authorities. Liam's eyes widened with genuine fear now. No. This is just a misunderstanding between siblings. Right, Viv? Just a miscommunication. I looked at my brother, the person who had taught me how to ride a bike, who had beaten up Tommy Winters in 5th grade for calling me names, who had cried with me at Mom's funeral even though he'd spent years telling me men don't cry. And I also saw the person who had broken every promise he'd ever made, who had borrowed money without repaying it, who had manipulated and charmed his way through life without ever facing consequences. No, Liam, I said quietly. This wasn't a miscommunication. You knew exactly what you were doing. The weight of betrayal hung between us like a physical presence as Mrs. Bellamy began to explain the next steps, the formal fraud report, the potential legal ramifications, the process of clearing my name. I had prepared myself for this moment, had rehearsed every word and anticipated every reaction. What I hadn't prepared for was the hollow feeling that expanded in my chest as I watched my brother's world begin to crumble. For the first time in his life, Liam Harlow was going to learn that actions have consequences. And I was the one teaching him that lesson. Outside, gray clouds gathered overhead, promising rain. Inside, the storm had already begun. Vivian, please, Liam's voice cracked, desperation seeping through. You don't understand, I needed the money. I was in trouble. What kind of trouble requires stealing your sister's identity? I kept my voice low, aware of curious glances from other bank customers. Mrs. Bellamy had stepped away to retrieve additional documents, giving us a moment's privacy that Liam clearly intended to use for persuasion. Investment opportunity, he said quickly. High return, limited window. I couldn't qualify for the loan with my credit, but I knew I could pay it back before. Before I found out? I finished for him. Before you ruined my credit score and put me at risk? He ran a hand through his meticulously styled hair, disheveling it in a way that suddenly made him look younger, vulnerable. It was going to turn around, Viv. I had it all figured out. Like you figured out the restaurant venture last year? Or the food truck business the year before? Or the cryptocurrency scheme that was going to make us all millionaires? With each reminder, I watched him flinch. How much have you borrowed from Dad that he doesn't talk about? From your friends? From those predatory payday loan places? Mrs. Bellamy returned with a folder, her expression professionally neutral despite the family drama unfolding at her desk. I have the loan application here, Ms. Harlow. Would you like to review the signature? I nodded, though we all knew what we would find. When she opened the folder, there it was, a reasonable forgery of my signature, close enough to pass a casual inspection but unmistakably not my handwriting to anyone who knew me well. Which meant Liam had counted on no one looking too closely. Liam started, then stopped, evidently thinking better of whatever lie he'd been about to tell. Not my signature, I finished. I never signed this document, never authorized this loan, and never received these funds. Mrs. Bellamy nodded, making a notation. In cases like this, the bank is required to file a report with the authorities. Identity theft is a criminal offense. The word criminal seemed to echo between us. In our family, we were many things, stubborn, sometimes selfish, occasionally manipulative, but we weren't criminals. At least, we hadn't been until now. There has to be another way, Liam said, a plea directed at both of us. Viv, come on. We can work this out between us. I'll get the money. I'll make payments. Whatever it takes. For a moment, I wavered. The thought of my brother facing criminal charges made my stomach twist. Despite everything, despite this monumental betrayal, some part of me still wanted to protect him. Then I remembered the sleepless nights after I'd received that letter. The panic attacks when I realized the enormity of what he'd done. The sickening feeling of violation knowing my own brother had stolen something as fundamental as my identity. Where's the money, Liam? I asked quietly. He looked away. It's tied up. Gone, you mean? Not gone. Just invested. Temporarily inaccessible. Mrs. Bellamy cleared her throat. Ms. Harlow, as the victim in this situation, you have options. You can press charges, or you can work out a repayment plan with your brother that would satisfy the debt. However, I must caution you that without formal proceedings, you would remain legally responsible for the loan. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. All my life, I'd been the responsible one, the fixer, the one who cleaned up messes, including Liam's. Our mother's final words to me had been to look after your brother. I'd interpreted that as a sacred charge, a duty that superseded my own well-being. But maybe what Liam really needed wasn't another bailout. Maybe what he needed was to finally face consequences. I took a deep breath. I want to file a formal identity theft report. Liam's face crumpled. Viv, no. Please. You can't do this. It'll ruin me. You did this, Liam, I corrected him. You ruined yourself. And you were willing to ruin me in the process. Mrs. Bellamy nodded and began preparing the necessary paperwork. As she explained the process, I watched Liam shrink into himself, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. If you could wait here, I need to speak with our security team, Mrs. Bellamy said, standing. This won't take long. As she walked away, Liam leaned forward, his voice urgent. You don't have to do this, Viv. I know I messed up. I know it was wrong. But it's me, your brother. We're family. Families don't steal from each other, Liam. Families don't put each other at risk. I was desperate, he insisted. There's more to this than you know. Something in his tone gave me pause. What do you mean? He glanced around nervously. The people I borrowed from before, they're not the kind you can just avoid paying back. They've been persistent. A chill ran down my spine. Are you saying you're in danger? Not exactly danger, but... Excuse me. We both looked up to see a security guard standing beside Mrs. Bellamy, his expression grave. Mr. Harlow, I need you to come with me, please. Liam stood, panic flashing across his face. Viv, please. Just give me a chance to make this right. As the security guard escorted him away, I felt the weight of my decision press against my chest. Had I done the right thing? Or had I just condemned my brother to something worse than debt? The rain I'd anticipated earlier had begun to fall, pattering against the windows of the bank like a melancholy soundtrack to the dissolution of what remained of my family. Mrs. Bellamy returned to her desk with a sympathetic smile. This is always difficult when family is involved. I'm sorry you're going through this, Ms. Harlow. What happens now? I asked, my voice hollow. The police will want to take a statement from you. There will be an investigation. If your brother is charged and convicted of identity theft, he could face significant penalties. I nodded, numb. There's something else you should know, she added, lowering her voice. This isn't the first time your brother has been involved in financial irregularities at this bank. My head snapped up. What? I'm limited in what I can share, but there was an incident several years ago involving a joint account he had with your father. The matter was handled internally at that time. The implication was clear. Dad had covered for him before. Had probably been covering for him for years without my knowledge. As I left the bank, my umbrella doing little to shield me from the driving rain, I felt as though I was seeing my family through new eyes. The golden boy, the responsible daughter, the doting father, all roles we'd been assigned and had dutifully played. But underneath those roles, how well did we really know each other? My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Everything okay, sweetheart? Liam said he was meeting you at the bank. I stared at the message, water droplets obscuring the screen. What should I tell him? That his son was a thief? That his daughter had just set in motion a process that could send Liam to jail? The truth, I decided. It was time for the truth, however painful. I need to talk to you, I typed. It's about Liam. And it's serious. As I walked to my car, I wondered if this was how Atlas felt when he shrugged, the momentary weightlessness before the burden settled once more, differently distributed but no less heavy. Dad was waiting for me on his front porch when I pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. The stately Victorian where Liam and I had grown up looked exactly as it always had, immaculately maintained, with Mom's rose garden still blooming despite her being gone for 5 years now. Dad had kept everything exactly as she would have wanted it. Everything except the truth. What's this about Liam? He asked as soon as I stepped out of the car, not even waiting for me to climb the porch steps. The worry lines on his face had deepened since I'd seen him last Sunday at our weekly family dinner. I took a deep breath, letting the familiar scent of home, cut grass, rose petals, the faint trace of Dad's pipe tobacco that clung to the porch swing cushions despite him having quit smoking years ago, steady me for what was to come. Liam stole my identity, I said, the words falling between us like stones. He took out a $35,000 loan in my name without my knowledge or consent. Dad's face went through a rapid succession of emotions, shock, disbelief, anger, and then something else. Something that looked strangely like resignation. Come inside, he said, his voice suddenly weary. We need to talk. I followed him into the house, through the foyer with its familiar creaking floorboard that Liam and I used to carefully avoid during late-night snack raids, past the living room where Mom's piano still sat untouched, and into Dad's study, his sanctuary, the place where family meetings were held when serious matters needed discussion. He gestured for me to sit in one of the worn leather armchairs while he poured 2 fingers of whiskey into crystal tumblers that had been a wedding gift to him and Mom. He handed me one without asking if I wanted it, and I accepted it without objecting, though I rarely drank hard liquor. This conversation clearly called for it. Tell me everything, he said, settling into the chair opposite mine. From the beginning. So I did. The credit alert letter. The investigation. The confrontation at the bank. Liam's partial confession and the revelation that he might be involved with dangerous people. Mrs. Bellamy's cryptic comment about previous financial irregularities. Throughout my account, Dad remained silent, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he took a long sip of his whiskey before speaking. "I should have seen this coming," he said finally, his voice heavy with self-recrimination. "I've been enabling him for too long." "What did Mrs. Bellamy mean about a joint account?" I asked, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. "What happened that you handled internally?" Dad sighed deeply. 5 years ago, right after your mother passed, Liam borrowed some money from our joint account. Without asking. He was supposed to be helping me manage the finances while I was grieving, and he took advantage of that. "How much?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer would be substantial. 20,000. I sucked in a breath. What did he need it for? He said it was for a business venture. Some startup a friend was launching. Dad swirled the amber liquid in his glass, watching it catch the fading afternoon light. "I found out when the bank called to verify a second withdrawal. I covered for him. Told the bank it was a misunderstanding. Paid back the money from my retirement fund." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Your mother had just died. You were devastated, trying to hold everything together. And I." He paused, staring into his glass as if the answers might be found there. "I didn't want to admit that my son was capable of that. That I had failed so completely as a father." The silence stretched between us, heavy with decades of unspoken truths. "This isn't the first time you've covered for him, is it?" I finally asked. Dad's expression answered before his words did. "No." A lifetime of memories suddenly shifted, viewed through this new lens of understanding. Liam's mysterious ability to bounce back from financial disasters. His lavish lifestyle despite his spotty employment history. The way Dad's retirement seemed more modest than it should have been, given his successful career. "How much, Dad? Over the years, how much have you given him?" He shook his head. "I stopped keeping track a long time ago. It was easier that way." Anger flared within me. Easier to pretend everything was fine? Easier to let him continue taking advantage of you? Of both of us? "I was trying to protect him," Dad defended, though his tone lacked conviction. "He's my son. Your mother always worried about him, said he needed extra guidance, extra support." "Support isn't the same as enablement," I countered. "And what about me? Did you ever think about protecting me?" Dad looked genuinely confused. "You never needed protection, Vivian. You were always the strong one, the responsible one." The unfairness of it hit me like a physical blow. "So I get punished for being responsible? Liam gets bailouts and second chances and protection, and I get, what? The burden of always having to be the adult?" "That's not what I meant." "But it's what happened," I interrupted, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "My whole life, the message has been clear: Liam needs help. Liam needs support. Liam needs protection. And what about what I need?" My voice broke on the last word, and to my horror, tears sprang to my eyes. I hadn't cried since Mom's funeral, had prided myself on being the strong one, the pillar that supported the rest of the family. Now, that pillar was crumbling. Dad looked stricken. "Vivian, I never thought. I never meant to make you feel less important." "I know," I said, wiping angrily at my tears. "That's almost worse. You didn't even realize you were doing it." My phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. It was a text from an unknown number. "This is Detective Palmer." We need you to come to the station regarding the identity theft report you filed. Your brother has been arrested. Reality crashed back in. Liam was in custody. This was really happening. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. Liam's been arrested. The police want me to come in. Dad stood too, his face ashen. I'll come with you. I hesitated, torn between the lifetime habit of letting Dad fix everything and the newfound determination to handle this my way. No, I said finally. I need to do this myself. But I'll call you afterward, I promise. As I gathered my things to leave, Dad caught my arm gently. Vivian, wait. Whatever you decide to do about Liam, I want you to know. I'm proud of you. For standing up for yourself. For being strong enough to do what I couldn't. The simple validation, something I had unconsciously craved my entire life, brought fresh tears to my eyes. Thanks, Dad, I managed. But I'm not feeling very strong right now. Strength isn't about not feeling afraid or uncertain, he said, his voice steady. It's about doing what needs to be done despite those feelings. As I drove to the police station, his words echoed in my mind. I had always done what needed to be done, for the family, for Dad, for Liam. But this time, I was doing what needed to be done for me. And that made all the difference. The police station was busier than I'd expected for a Friday evening. Officers moved with purposeful efficiency through the fluorescent-lit space, while civilians waited in uncomfortable-looking plastic chairs, their faces reflecting various stages of stress, boredom, or resignation. Detective Palmer turned out to be a woman in her mid-40s with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that somehow reminded me of my high school algebra teacher. Ms. Harlow, she greeted me, extending her hand. Thank you for coming in. We have some questions about the identity theft report you filed. She led me to a small interview room, where the institutional beige walls and the table bolted to the floor gave me an unexpected twinge of anxiety. I'd never been in trouble with the law, had always been the rule follower, the good girl. Being here, even as the victim, felt wrong somehow. Your brother has been formally charged with identity theft and loan fraud, Detective Palmer began, opening a folder. He's been processed and is currently being held pending a bail hearing. The clinical terminology made my stomach clench. Liam, annoying, charming, irresponsible Liam, was now an inmate. A criminal. Can I see him? I asked, surprising even myself with the question. Detective Palmer raised an eyebrow. That's unusual in these circumstances, but not impossible. May I ask why? I hesitated, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. He's still my brother. And he said something at the bank about being in trouble with dangerous people. I want to know what that's about. She studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'll arrange it after we've completed our interview. But first, I need your formal statement about the loan and how you discovered the identity theft. For the next hour, I answered questions and signed statements, officially declaring myself a victim and my brother a perpetrator. With each signature, I felt the finality of my decision settle more heavily upon me. Finally, Detective Palmer closed her folder. That's all for now. I'll take you to see your brother, though I should warn you, he's not in the best state right now. We walked through a series of secure doors, each buzzing ominously as it unlocked and then locked behind us. The holding area was separated from the visitation room by a thick glass partition with small speaker holes for communication. Detective Palmer nodded to an officer, who brought Liam in. I barely recognized him at first. His carefully styled hair was disheveled, his expensive clothes rumpled and stained. But it was his expression that shocked me most. Gone was the cocky confidence, replaced by a haunted look that aged him a decade. "You have 10 minutes, Detective Palmer said, stepping back to give us some privacy, though I knew she was still watching. Liam sat across from me, separated by glass, looking smaller somehow. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, his voice rough. "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. "What did you mean about dangerous people, Liam? Are you in some kind of trouble?" He laughed, a hollow sound with no humor in it. "Besides being arrested for identity theft?" "Yeah, you could say that." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't try to make me the bad guy here. You stole from me. You committed a crime. Now tell me what's going on." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from childhood. "I borrowed money from some guys. The kind who don't use banks or contracts, if you know what I mean." "Loan sharks?" I whispered, horrified. He nodded. "I was certain this investment would pay off. It was a sure thing. But it didn't work out." "So you stole my identity instead of coming to me for help?" "Would you have helped me?" he challenged. "After all the times I've asked for money and never paid it back? After all the failed ventures and broken promises?" I wanted to say yes, that of course I would have helped my brother. But that would have been a lie, and we both knew it. "I would have tried to get you real help," I said instead. "Not just a bailout. Counseling, maybe. Financial management courses. Something to break this cycle." He snorted. "Right. Because there's something wrong with me. Poor, broken Liam who can't get his act together." "There is something wrong with you," I said, anger flaring. "Normal people don't steal their sister's identity. Normal people don't lie and manipulate everyone around them. Normal people face consequences for their actions." "Like I'm facing now?" he shot back. "Is this what you wanted, Viv? To see me in handcuffs? To punish me?" "I wanted you to stop," I said, my voice cracking. "To stop lying. To stop taking advantage. To stop thinking only of yourself without any regard for how your actions affect others." He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "How much do you owe them?" I asked after a moment. "The loan sharks?" "About 15,000. They gave me 3 months. I've got 2 weeks left." I did the math quickly. "So out of the 35,000 you stole in my name, only 15 was for paying back these people? What happened to the rest?" He shrugged, a gesture so cavalier it made my blood boil. "Investments. Living expenses. You know." "No, Liam, I don't know. I don't know how you could take my identity, my good credit, my trust, and squander it like it meant nothing." His facade cracked, just for a moment, and I glimpsed genuine remorse. "I was going to pay it back, Viv. Before you ever found out. I swear." "With what? Another scheme? Another loan? Another victim?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Time's up," Detective Palmer called, approaching from where she'd been waiting. "What happens now?" Liam asked, suddenly looking very young and frightened. I stood, gathering my purse. "Now you face the consequences of your actions. For once in your life. Viv, please," he called as I turned to go. "These guys, they don't mess around. If I'm in here, I can't pay them back. They might come looking for me, or for you or Dad." I froze, turning back slowly. "Is that a threat, Liam?" "No," he exclaimed, eyes wide. "It's a warning. I'm worried about you. About Dad. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost fell back into the familiar pattern of Liam creating messes and the rest of us cleaning them up. But then I remembered the forged signature. The deliberate theft of my identity. The calculated deception. You should have thought of that before you borrowed money from criminals, I said coldly. Before you stole from your own sister. Before you put your entire family at risk. As Detective Palmer escorted me out, I could hear Liam calling my name, his voice increasingly desperate. But I kept walking, each step both a weight and a liberation. Outside the police station, the night air hit me like a slap, snapping me back to reality. What had I done? Had I just condemned my brother to danger? Had my desire to finally see him face consequences overridden all common sense? I pulled out my phone and called Dad. I'm at the police station, I said when he answered. We need to talk about Liam. And not just about the identity theft. What's wrong? Dad's voice was instantly alert. He owes money to loan sharks. $15,000. And he says they're dangerous. The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. Dad? Are you there? I'm here, he sighed. Come home, Vivian. There's more you need to know. The drive back to Dad's house seemed to take forever, my mind racing with questions and fears. What else had Liam done? What else had Dad hidden from me? How deep did this rabbit hole go? When I arrived, Dad was waiting in the kitchen, a pot of coffee brewing. He looked older than he had just hours ago, the lines in his face deepened by worry. Sit down, he said, pouring 2 mugs of coffee even though we both knew sleep would be elusive tonight. This isn't the first time Liam's been involved with these people. I sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. What do you mean? The $20,000 he took from our joint account 5 years ago? It wasn't for a business venture. It was to pay back a loan shark. Different group, same problem. I stared at him, disbelief warring with a terrible certainty. And you just paid it off? Without consequences? Without getting him help? Dad looked away, shame written clearly on his face. I thought it was a one-time mistake. He promised he'd never do it again. And your mother had just died. I couldn't bear the thought of losing Liam too, even to prison. So you enabled him. Again. I tried to protect him, Dad corrected, though there was no conviction in his voice. But yes, I suppose I did enable him. And now here we are, 5 years later, with him doing the same thing but worse, dragging you into it this time. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, trying to ground myself. What are we going to do? What do you want to do, Vivian? Dad asked, surprising me. It's your identity he stole. Your decision whether to press charges or not. The weight of that decision pressed down on me. If I dropped the charges, Liam would be released. We could pay off the loan sharks, get him into therapy, try to break the cycle. But would he actually change? Or would he see it as just another bailout, another example of him being able to charm and manipulate his way out of consequences? If I didn't drop the charges, he would likely go to prison. His record would be permanently marked. But he would finally face real consequences for his actions. And maybe, just maybe, that would be the wake-up call he needed. I don't know, I admitted. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I feel betrayed. But he's still my brother. Dad reached across the table and took my hand. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But Vivian. He hesitated, then continued. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't sacrifice your well-being for Liam's comfort. He needs to face this, one way or another. I squeezed his hand, grateful for his support even as I grappled with the enormity of the decision before me. I need time to think, I said. And we need to find out more about these loan sharks. How dangerous they really are. Dad nodded. I know someone who might be able to help with that. An old friend from my law firm days. He's retired now, but he used to handle cases involving organized crime. Call him, I said decisively. And then we'll decide what to do about Liam. As Dad went to make the call, I sat alone in the kitchen of my childhood home, surrounded by memories of happier times. Family dinners, holiday celebrations, everyday moments of laughter and love. When had things gone so wrong? When had Liam's charming irresponsibility evolved into criminal behavior? When had Dad's protective instincts become harmful enablement? When had my own responsibility become a burden too heavy to bear? More importantly, how could we fix it? Was it even possible to rebuild what had been broken? I didn't have answers yet, but for the first time, I was asking the right questions. And maybe that was a start. Dad's friend, Martin Chen, arrived the next morning just as dawn was breaking. A compact man in his 70s with alert eyes and a purposeful manner, he shook my hand with a grip that belied his age. Arthur's told me about your situation, he said without preamble as Dad poured him coffee. I need names, locations, any details your brother shared about these loan sharks. I don't have much, I admitted. Just that he owes them $15,000 and has 2 weeks left to pay. Martin nodded, unsurprised. These operations typically run on 30-day or 90-day terms. The interest is exorbitant, often doubling or tripling the original loan amount. What happens if he doesn't pay? I asked, dreading the answer. Depends on the group, Martin said, his tone matter of fact. Some start with threats, property damage, harassment. Others skip straight to violence. It varies. A chill ran down my spine. And if he's in jail? Would they come after his family? Martin considered this, taking a sip of his coffee. Possibly. These aren't sophisticated criminal organizations we're talking about, more like neighborhood thugs with a financial scheme. They might not have the resources or inclination to track down family members. But I can't rule it out. Dad leaned forward, his face grim. So what are our options? Pay the debt, Martin said immediately. That's the simplest solution. Remove the financial incentive for them to pursue this any further. And reward Liam's behavior in the process, I finished, the bitter taste of this impossible choice coating my tongue. Martin's weathered face remained impassive. I understand your reluctance. The alternative is to let the legal process run its course while taking precautions. Additional security for you and your father, possibly temporary relocation. Outside, morning light spilled across the lawn where Liam and I had played as children. How had we arrived at this juncture, discussing criminal threats and security measures over coffee in our family kitchen? There's a third option, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We pay the debt, but Liam remains in custody. He faces the legal consequences of his actions while we eliminate the external threat. Dad's eyes met mine with newfound respect. That's actually quite sensible. It could work, Martin agreed, his analytical mind visibly processing the angles. Though you'd need to arrange payment without Liam's direct involvement. These aren't people who accept checks in the mail. The weight of this decision settled on my shoulders, an uncomfortable but familiar burden. Always the responsible one, even in the aftermath of betrayal. I'll do it, I said firmly. I'll meet them, pay the debt. But Liam needs to understand, this is the last time. Dad reached across the table, his hand covering mine. The tremor I felt there reminded me that he was aging, that his strength was finite. That perhaps, in his own misguided way, he had been trying to protect all of us. "We'll do it together," he said. "As a family." The word family hung in the air between us, fractured but not broken, wounded but not destroyed. Whatever came next, we would face it with clear eyes and honest hearts. No more secrets. No more enabling. No more sacrificing truth at the altar of comfort. As Martin began outlining the logistics of our plan, I felt an unexpected sense of peace wash over me. The path forward wasn't simple, but it was clear. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was walking it on my own terms.